did the brown shirts increase support for the Nazi Party 1929 to 1932. Hitler's brown shirts played an important role in increasing support for the Nazi Party in a positive and negative way. By 1932, the brown shirts numbered 600,000. The movement attracted many unemployed and unhappy young people who admired the discipline and fighting qualities of the brown shirts. The brown shirts organized parades through towns and cities, which impressed many Germans who saw order and discipline in a time of chaos. The brown shirts were also used to intimidate any political opposition.
Our enemies say we Nazis are intolerant, that we're somehow un-German, because we refuse to cooperate with other political parties. I want to make one thing quite clear. They're right. We are intolerant. And I have set myself one task, namely to drive those other parties out of Germany.
They frequently attacked and disrupted the meetings of rival groups, especially those of the Republican Party. They were often seen as bullies, something that worried respectable German voters.
No such act of barbaric vandalism had been recorded in modern history. As the leaping flames of the Nazi bonfires illumined the night, the crowd about danced and hurrahed in an ecstasy of mad emotion, while stories of wanton beatings and bullyings in the darkened streets added to the terror.
Such pictures were seen around the world, and the Germans were now seen as barbaric. Violence and intimidation was the order of the day. The Nazi Party and its followers organized rallies that would often turn violent. The police had a hard time keeping control. The Nazis organized rallies against the Jews. They referred to the Jews as the 1%. A call to all future generations. Please do not let this happen again.
So it is the PC language police. It is the progressives, the fanatics of the progressive left who are, in fact, the bigots of our modern society. They are the cognitive pushers of intolerance. They cannot stand any opinion or any speech or any words even that disagree with their very limited, stilted, distorted views. Political correctness is, in essence, a demand of uniformity, or what I call cognitive conformity, so that everyone's language and ideas and thoughts and beliefs and cultural attachments, if you will, all conform to a few key mythological ideas that may have no foundation in reality, but are considered real by the narrative of those in power. And thus political correctness is an insidious form of what you might call a mandatory mental servitude to an agenda or a set of ideas, usually rooted in falsehoods or mythologies. And this is what we see today. Actually, the rise of political correctness in Western culture today is, in fact, the perfect mirror of political correctness back in the Nazi era. This is what gave rise to tyranny. This is what created a society that became genocidal. It was the enforcement of political correctness that allowed such widespread popular support of Adolf Hitler to be able to carry out these insidious, heinous, anti-human actions against others, against his stated enemies. So political correctness can actually set into motion a series of societal events that lead to an escalation of the language of violence against nonconformists, and we've seen that also in modern day PC language, but then it escalates into acts of actual physical violence against those who disagree with the official narrative. And we see this today as well with the Black Lives Matter inspired shooters, the terrorists, who are shooting, targeting police officers and actually openly talking about targeting police officers, even encouraging it. This is really an extension of the politically correct language enforcement, or the thought police, that have their roots right back in Nazi Germany. So if you really examine the PC culture, you find that those individuals are the most belligerent, are the most inflammatory in terms of their rhetoric, are most often engaged in inciting and encouraging acts of violence or encouraging acts of racism, encouraging intolerance stances. And in fact, rather than welcoming diversity and inclusiveness, they are in fact exclusive. And they demand obedience, not diversity, but rather conformity to their specific accepted ideas that are all essentially delusional. Now, where does this go? If we don't stop it in society, where does it lead us? Well, just look at the history of Nazi Germany as a great example. If you don't stop this, it escalates to the point of eventual genocide. In Hitler's day, you had the brown shirts. The brown shirts were really the PC enforcers of the Nazi era, of the Third Reich. And the brown shirts were angry citizens who were extremely loyal to their cause and who believed that the ends justified the means, that it didn't matter what they did to other citizens as long as they got them all to fall into line and be obedient to their worship of Adolf Hitler. And this is another important point to remember, that the Nazi regime is really an extreme demonstration of socialism. In fact, the word Nazi means National Socialism. It's not a far-right group on the political spectrum. It's actually a combination of government corporate fascism with extreme socialism and centralization of economic power and social power and cultural power into the hands of the few. So language becomes weaponized. This is all by design. It's all engineered. And the words are carefully chosen in the realm of political correctness to weaponize them in such a way as to cause an escalation of violent ideas or violent themes or extreme hatred in the minds of the citizens that they are trying to manipulate. Because it is from this hatred and this chaos that the government is able to demand power, demand obedience, seize power. And again, this is exactly what we saw in the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Third Reich. Adolf Hitler promised hope and change. Adolf Hitler promised a utopian society. He promised a better life for everyone as long as they worshipped and followed his vision and did his bidding. And then through the control of language, through political correctness of that day, he was able to shut down any opposition to his ideas. So if you weren't with the Nazis, then you were an enemy of the state. And you were imprisoned sometimes, you were silenced, you were fired from your job, you were ostracized by society. Well, what do we see today in modern America? We see people being fired from their jobs, executives being fired or demoted. We see people's social media accounts shut down, like Milo Yiannopoulos, Breitbart.com editor, shut down not because he violated any terms of service, because he didn't, rather because of the content of his ideas, or the color of his ideas, if you will. You know, we come from a society where Martin Luther King said we should judge people by the content of the character, not the color of their skin. And yet now we end up in a society where we are judged by the color of our ideas. So we've entered a very dangerous realm. And history tells us that this usually ends up in extreme bloodshed. If you look at the Nazi regime, for example, it became very quickly apparent to those who opposed Adolf Hitler that you were not going to stop that regime and those crimes against humanity by reasoning with the brown shirts or reasoning with the leaders of the Nazi political party or reasoning with Adolf Hitler. You weren't going to debate this. You weren't going to talk your way into an accord of peace.